Unfound has now covered 375 disappearances over the course of about 540 episodes. It has an interview-based format and concentrates on the facts, not the theories. Today, and for the 21st time, I will take you back to the beginning, then right up to the present, as I cover news over the past 4 months pertaining to some of Unfound's cases. I'm Ed Dunsel, and this is Unfound. But first, Unfound news. Part 2 of my appearance on Heather Grotman's podcast is now out. We discuss the unusual death of Cindy James. Please find the Lost and Found blog podcast on Spotify and elsewhere. Next, please be looking for the next Unfound Now on YouTube. And for all you Patreon and YouTube supporters, be looking for the next Found episode. Finally, I know I've been talking about it for a long time, but the Unfound searchable database is just about done. The next phase will be testing it. Okay, for anybody who is new to the podcast, and that is certainly possible given what has gone on, especially this year with me appearing on Jason Blair's podcast, with me recently appearing on Heather Grotman's podcast. I know once in a while I get mentioned over there on Julia Cowley's podcast, The Consult, and I've been on A&E just within the last month or two. Some of you may be new and you may be saying, what is this, an update episode? What does that mean? Well, I've been doing this for, since the summer of 2018. And that's why we're on update episode number 21. These episodes happen every 4 months. So there is one at the end of April or sometime in April, one at the end of August, like I'm doing today, and then one at the end of the year, the last Friday of December. And this is one of the few podcasts, to my knowledge, that does this, where I will actually go back and look at every disappearance that Unfound is featured. I also do all of the Unfound Nows that are done on YouTube. There's a monthly series there, and we're doing that for over 5 years now. And I will see if there are any updates in any of the cases. And as you can imagine, these days with 375 disappearances, it can be a little bit of work, but I've taken it on, and that's fine. And I will go back and see if there are any changes in any of the statuses of any of the disappearances, any changes within the last 4 months. So except there might be a couple exceptions in this one because I did miss a couple things the last time around in April and even going back to last December. And that happens once again when you get up over 300 disappearances. I miss one or two things here and there. I try to make up for it later. But mainly what you hear in these episodes are any updates, any news that has occurred in the past 4 months. So for this one, the end of August, anything going back to the last update episode, which came out in April. So anything from the end of April into May, June, July, and then here into August of 2025. If you ever want to hear any of the updates, older updates, you have to go back to the old update episodes going the whole way back to 2018. So I go through and I just do the best I can to see if there are any changes. So if there are any searches going on, if anybody's been charged, if any remains have been found, any bodies have been identified, or any remains that we thought might be an unfound disappearance and it's not, anything along those lines can be contained in one of these update episodes. I also try to keep track regarding guests, if they have anything going on in their lives. And we have a couple of those kinds of updates for this episode here at the end of August of 2025. So also try to keep involved as much as I can with what is going on with guests who have been on the Unfound. And once again, given that there are so many episodes, we have a lot of guests. I have a lot of guests to keep track of, and once again, I sometimes miss news here and there. And we are coming up on the 9th anniversary, so it's been a while. Some of these people I have not talked to in a while. It's just the way it goes sometimes. So I go back through. If there are any updates, I put it down into a file in my notes, and those are the notes that I follow for this episode. I do not type them all out because that would take forever. I simply write down a little bit, and then I just commit the rest of it to memory. So I'm not reading from a script for the most part during these update episodes. So please forgive the ums, you knows, repeated words, things like that. I appreciate if you could have some leniency there. In addition, because I know it's been a while since some of these disappearances have been featured, at the beginning of each update, I do the intro to that particular episode. So I go through the name, of course, the age of the missing person, where they're from, just a little bit about them, and the circumstances of their particular disappearance, just to kind of maybe a light bulb will go off. Oh, yeah, I remember this disappearance now. If that's not enough, I'm sorry. You'll just have to go back and find that episode to remind yourself, maybe a little better, listening to it all over again or something. So we're going to get started here, and I do these chronologically according to how Unfound featured them. So I go back to the first episode that has an update, going back to whether would it be 2016, 2017, wherever, and then work my way up to the present. And then for the Unfound now, so once again, this series on YouTube that I've been doing for over 5 years, where I look at recent disappearances, I do the same thing. So then I go back to the oldest one and go up to the present, reminding everybody I only talk about disappearances that have updates, although I may put one or two in there because I want to make a point about this disappearance, maybe a new insight or something like that, but that's somewhat rare. Almost all of these are just once again, updates. So let's get started. First update, Suzanne Lyall. Susie Lyall was a 19-year-old student at the University of New York at Albany. She was a computer major, but also a passionate poet who loved sharing her writing with others. On the night of March 2nd, 1998, she got off the bus at the Collins Circle stop on university property and headed toward her dormitory. She was never seen again. Now, the update here is not necessarily an update, but I include her in this August update every year because Unfound will be celebrating its 9th anniversary next Friday. The anniversary for Unfound is always the first Friday of September, no matter what that date might be. That is when the first episode of Unfound ever came out, the first Friday of September of 2016. So the 9th anniversary, and for all the new people, to commemorate that, I always play the first interview I ever did for Unfound, and that was with Susie Lyall's mother, Mary, who continues to be a good friend of mine. I've not spoken to her in a while. I got to put that on my list of things to do. I should give her a call to see how she's doing. But next Friday, what would that be? Would that be, today is the 29th, that would be September 5th. The 9th anniversary episode will be the replaying of the interview I did with Mary way back in August of 2016. I wasn't even close to being 50 years old yet. That is crazy. So that is the update. Just to remind all of you, 9th anniversary next Friday. Susie's disappearance, of course, is still unsolved. To my knowledge, as best as I could research. And like I said, I need to talk to Mary. I haven't spoken to her in a while. I usually talk to her at least once a year. No updates. I think her disappearance is just as cold as it's been for a long time. Very sadly, I know some of you think that Israel Keys caused her disappearance. I'm not inclined to believe that. I think the perpetrator of her disappearance is much closer to Susie than that. And I will just leave it there. And for all you new people, if you've not yet listened to that interview, I realize that it was the first one in my career. I think it's still pretty good. I think it still holds up all these years later. Some of the other old interviews that I did when I was first learning how to interview people, maybe not as good, but I think that that interview with Mary is still very solid 9 years later. So if you're new, why not just start by going way back to the beginning and starting with the first episode of Unfound. Susie Lyall, going back to September of 2016. Next update, Brandon Williams. Brandon Williams, Haas to his family, was a 33-year-old from Ephraim, Utah. He had lived in such wide-ranging places as the Hamptons and California. On May 17th, 2013, he got on a bus in Salt Lake City, heading back to where he lived in Key West, Florida. On May 18th, he made a call to a friend saying he was in Nashville. He was never seen again. The update here has nothing to do with the disappearance, but as you all know, I've been keeping tabs on the health of Brandon's sister, who was the guest way back in 2017. Her name is Stormy Dorsey, and she has been fighting brain cancer for, 5 years now, which she's... Coincidentally, I think it's today, and I'm recording this on August 25th of 2025. I think she's going in for at least her third operation. She continues to hang in there. It came out of nowhere very suddenly. Like I said, about 5 years ago, she was out at some place with the group, and she felt fine 1 second, and then the next second she was passed out, and they discovered that she had tumors on her brain, and it's been treated. It went away. It comes back. It goes away again. And I'm not talking out of school here. She's been very public with this on her Facebook page. And so I hope all of you will keep her in your thoughts and prayers. If you are inclined to believe in such things, I just want to make you aware. She continues to fight that battle, and she's continuing to win it, and I hope that will continue. So that's what's going on with Stormy. I think I've done this kind of update for her before because I've been doing these updates for a while, and she's been fighting this for a while. But for all you new people, she was a perfectly healthy human being when I interviewed her back at the time that her brother's episode came out. He is still missing, by the way. Very sad. And then just a couple years later, all this started happening to her. So there you go. Please keep in your minds Stormy Dorsey, guest of Unfound, sister of Brandon Williams. Next update, Craig Frier. Craig Frier was a 17-year-old from Glenville, New York. He was the captain of his soccer team and an all-around popular guy. On June 27th, 2004, although he should have been at work, he was at a friend's house. After getting caught in this lie, Craig said he was coming home. He was never seen again. I do this once a year. There are, unfortunately, no updates, but in the update episodes is where I sometimes insert this. I'm still looking for anybody out there who knows the name of the girl who was with Craig that day when he was tracked down at her apartment. I've had a few people try to work on this on the side for me behind the scenes. Unsuccessful. I've mentioned it on the live show, although not recently, that I do on Monday nights. And just maybe once every other year on the update episodes, I put this in here. I'm still looking for a name. I'd love to track her down. I'd love to talk to her. Somebody out there has to know who she is. And I know what you're saying. Well, doesn't Craig's mother? No, well, she surely does. But as I think I've mentioned on update episodes before, I haven't spoken to her since I interviewed her way back when, 7 years ago, maybe 7 years ago at least. I don't think it's anything personal. I think that's just the kind of person that she is, and she surely knows. But although I've not tried to contact her recently, there have been times when I've tried to follow up with her through the years, and she just refuses to get back to me. And in fact, I think I even mentioned when the episode came out that it was a kind of unusual how her interview even came about, in that I talked to her once, then I couldn't get a hold of her, and she was avoiding my emails or calls or something like that. And then all of a sudden she contacts me one day and says, all right, I'm ready to do the interview. We did the interview. I think she did as good an interview she's ever done regarding her son's disappearance. And then I never spoke to her again. Like I said, I think that's just the way she is. I don't take it personally. I don't think I've ever done anything to tick her off. I think I've been very supportive. I know there have been people out there who have suspected Craig's father in his disappearance. I do not. So she probably does know, but she didn't mention it in the interview. And unfortunately, that was early in my career. And that is surely something I would have asked now. But I have my Craig Frier notes from back then, 2017 into 2018, and her name's not in there. So either she didn't want to tell me or I didn't ask. I really don't remember. It seems like the kind of thing I certainly would ask. Little did I know how many years later I'd be like, man, I really, really, really wish I knew her name, but I don't. And so she's out there somewhere, and of course she would now be, if she was 18 in 2004, 21, she'd be almost 40 now. She's surely an adult now. I'm guessing people locally to the Glenville, Scotia, New York area know. Or some of Craig's friends know. Any of them want to ever contact me, unfoundpodcast@gmail.com. You, of course, remain a secret. As to my source, you'll remain secret to the public. I promise you on that. But I really want to know what went down when he got that call. So there you go. I'm still looking. Anybody out there know her name and can verify it? Just don't start sending me fake names, of course. I would appreciate some information on there because just nobody's been able to find it. I will admit that I personally have not worked on it because I have a podcast to do. Maybe I just need to work on it myself. But that's the call out. Do you know the name of the girl who was with Craig where he was at her apartment that day? Next update, Flight 370. MH370 was a Malaysian Airlines flight originating in Kuala Lumpur. Its destination was Beijing, China. On the night of March 8th, 2014, while flying over the South China Sea, all of its communication equipment was shut off, making it invisible to air traffic control. An hour later, Malaysian military radar tracked the flight heading northwest up the Malacca Strait. Flight 70 was never seen again. Now, we have a true update, and as I've stated before, all of you should be subscribed to Jeff Wise's YouTube channel, where he doesn't do episodes weekly. He does them, it seems like once a month. I guess I would say is he puts out episodes when he has something to say that is new, or an update, something like that, on his work that he has been doing for Flight 370. Jeff was Unfound's guest way back when on Unfound, and I continue to exchange emails with Jeff once in a while. In fact, one of those just happened within the last couple weeks. I find Jeff to be a very good guy, even though many people within the aviation industry consider him to be on the fringes when it comes to ideas concerning Flight 370, but I can tell you, Jeff is as professional can be within the aviation community on knowledge, reporting. You see him on many of the older Mayday series. What else is there? Air traffic investigations or air crash investigation shows. That I don't know if they still make those like new ones, but 15 years ago those were all the rage, and Jeff appeared on many of them. In fact, I still see him on there, and it's of course 15 years ago, and he looks like he's like 15 years old. And Jeff to this day still has a very youthful look to him. I'm guessing he's around my age somewhere, but he still has a very youthful look to him. Back then, he looks like he's a teenager or something. It's kind of funny, but he's been doing episodes this summer, and two that stuck out to me. He's really been tracking down experts on marine life, and marine life that grows on objects that end up in the oceans of the world, mainly, of course, salt water. Of course, we talk like the Great Lakes are, of course, freshwater, but the Atlantic Ocean, Pacific Ocean, Indian Ocean, which is, of course, most important for Flight 370, the Mediterranean Sea out here, the Gulf of whatever you want to call it, that's right beside Florida. That's all salt water. So he continues to track down experts on marine biologists, I guess, just like George Costanza, who are knowledgeable about creatures that grow on stuff in the ocean. And what continues to pop up is that the items that have airplane pieces that years ago drifted onto the shores of East Africa or Madagascar, the island to the east off the east coast of Africa. Those items, whatever the flapper on, whatever it was, had creatures on them. Unfortunately, though, the creatures growing on them could not have grown in a way to believe that those items had been in the ocean for the time since Flight 370 went missing. This comes up over and over again, and I really, really believe that Jeff is absolutely being objective on this, that it's not him saying it. He actually interviews these scientists who say, it just doesn't, there's something about the growth of these creatures on these pieces that don't go along with the idea that they are actually from Flight 370, or if they are, it's hard to understand because the growth patterns for these organisms should be different than when they are found on these items. Specifically having to do with how these objects float in the water, because you have to remember when they float in the water, they're not totally submerged. Usually, at least a little piece of it is sticking outside of the above the water, no different than a ship. It finds its buoyancy. And the way these items float in the water and how the organisms have grown on these pieces and then they were found, it just doesn't match up with the idea that these parts were in the water since March of 2014 or went into the water in the area of the Indian Ocean that all the other experts say, well, yeah, that's where it crashed in the South Indian Ocean. That is not what these organisms say and their growth patterns on these parts. So something somewhere is off. Now, of course, for Jeff, he continues to think that the plane got hijacked and was landed somewhere else. And I guess these parts were taken off the plane and then put in the Indian Ocean. I know that sounds very, very complex. And I have my doubts about at least part of that. Whereas the people who think it crashed in the South Indian Ocean, it seems they aren't correct either because of the way these organisms have grown on these pieces of wreckage, if they even really do come from Flight 370. So that's the first update. That continues to be a story for this summer of 2025. The other one is Jeff Wise most recently interviewed I forget what this guy's degree is in, but was he from Finland, I think? A very thick accent. You can't understand him. He's speaking English, where he has investigated pilot suicide. So we can think about the Silk Air crash, German Wings crash, going way back to whatever year it was. Was it 1999? Was it the Egypt Air crash after it took off from New York? And there's another one, all commercial airline flights where the pilots almost certainly committed suicide, crashed the planes on purpose with passengers on them. And what Jeff did was talk to this guy about knowing what this guy could find about the pilot and co-pilot of Flight 370. Did either of these guys exhibit any of the tendencies and the actions and sympathies, what they were saying in their lives, that these 4 other pilots did in crashing their planes almost surely? And the answer is no. So even though that's a popular idea out there, and I realize when it comes to this kind of psychiatry, it's very hit and miss. There's nothing that this guy could find that would say that either the pilots of Flight 370 had exhibited any suicide, what we call suicide ideations, or anything going on in their lives that was bad. And I've kind of decided on that for a while, but it's reassuring, I guess, from my own standpoint, that you have now a scientist who doing a paper on this that kind of comes to the same conclusion. So there's that. Once again, just don't take my word for it. Go to Jeff Wise's YouTube page. It's just called Jeff Wise, W-I-S-E. And please catch up on all of the episodes that he has done there on Flight 370. Still probably to this day, the biggest mystery, not just aviation, but period, the biggest mystery of the 21st century. Next update, Tom Brown. Thomas Kelly Brown was an 18-year-old from Canadian Texas. He was the president of his class and loved acting and public speaking. On the night of November 23rd, 2016, Thomas was on his way home after hanging out with friends. He stopped to get gas in his Dodge Durango. He was never seen again. Now, if you're really, really, really new to the podcast, you are then probably unaware of the relationship that this podcast has with the disappearance of Tom Brown. I would go back and check that out for yourselves. But I'm going to say for most people listening to this are very well aware of what has gone on since Tom's disappearance was featured in the summer of 2018. His remains actually ended up being found, what I would say by accident, coincidentally by a sheriff's deputy who was not doing police work when he found it. I'll just keep it at that. Part of the remains. That was in end of January, early February of 2019. And then when was it? Was it August of 2019 or 2020? Was it during COVID? I can't even remember anymore. It's been a while. There was a meeting where eventually the Texas the Attorney General's office, their investigators, they got involved in trying to figure out what happened to Tom. And they pretty much came to the conclusion that Tom committed suicide. But since then, and that, of course, that meeting got taped. I don't know if it was necessarily illegally, but it was taped by the sheriff at the time of Hemphill County, Nathan Lewis. That recording then got to be public. I've heard it, and I never did release it to the public because it shouldn't have been recorded in the first place. And but I'm going to guess some of you at least have heard it somewhere. And since then, even though the state attorney general's office came to a particular conclusion, it's not a firm conclusion, but preponderance of the evidence. Tom's family, along with Phil Klein and some others, have continued to believe, Phil Klein, private investigator for the Brown or the Meek family, continue to believe that Tom did not die by a suicide, but he died from something else, foul play. And in fact, Phil Klein did a presentation, once again, the year escapes me. It was a video, I think it was live streamed on YouTube or somewhere, in which he said he was going to show the reason that Tom was murdered. And I think, of course, I had my idea going in that Tom wasn't, and I still think that. People, I think, wanted to go in watching this video from so many years ago thinking, oh, yeah, this is... Because I think there are a lot of people who want to believe that he was murdered. And so they went in hoping that was what the presentation was going to show. And the idea that I got after that was done, like I said, was that 5 years ago now, 4 years ago, that people just came away thinking, well, probably he wasn't. And this is where all of the conspiracy about there was fixing of high school football games and there was a betting ring, all these allegations that seemingly have gone off into the ether because I never see any of them mentioned anymore, even though at the time there were certain people that were so certain that this stuff was true. So what has gone on this summer, though, has been a little bit different. And the update here is that there was a lot of legal wrangling, and I'm certainly not going to read to you all of the posts that have been done on Phil Klein's Klein Investigations and Consulting page regarding all of this. But there have been ongoing disagreements between Tom's mother, Penny, who was the guest of Unfound back in 2018, and Tom's father. They are now, Penny and the father are now divorced. They've been divorced for many years. And there was a lot of legal wrangling with Tom's, I'm not a legal expert. Just it seems that Tom's father was trying to do some things that my perception is that they were underhanded regarding money and Tom's body and whether it was going to be released to the family and whether it was going to get buried and whatever else. Why this was, I don't know. Now, I will admit that I've never talked to Tom's father, never had an email with him, no texting with him, nothing, zero, no letters, nothing. I have not had ever one communication with him. The only communications I've ever had is with Tom's mother. In fact, I met her in person back in the summer of 2019, but I have not spoken to her in a while. But I will tell you that Tom's father has always seemed a little unusual to me. Once again, having never met him, but I just kind of got that idea from just the coverage of the disappearance alone before Tom's partial remains were found and before all the other stuff started going on. I really don't know what's going on here. I know what people are saying. I don't know if any of that is the truth. It's truth. It certainly seems unusual to me, but I'm guessing if I could talk to Tom's father, he'd have something to say. That might make sense. I'm not saying I would believe him, but so this has been a summer of it's been seemingly Tom's mother, Tom's brother, versus the ex-husband Tom's father regarding Tom's estate. I mean, he's a teenager. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not a legal expert. So that's been what's been going on this summer since the last update episode. I would urge you to just go to Phil Klein's. I can't believe I'm going to even tell you all this, but you can just read it for yourself. You can go to Phil Klein's Facebook page and read it for yourself. You have to go back to at least June to find, or maybe even maybe in July, to find a post about this, and it's fairly long, so you can judge it for yourself. Now, there is another post that happened since the last update episode that I want to go over, but I'm not going to go through the whole thing, just part of it. So this part of the update for Tom Brown comes from a post that was a public statement from June 17th of 2025, so over 2 months ago. And this is an ongoing disagreement between Phil Klein, who is the investigator. He's almost like, I guess, the defense lawyer for the Brown, for Penny and her side of the family. That's the way I would put it. But he is a private investigator licensed in Texas. And his continuing disagreement with that radio host at that radio station, I never mentioned the name of either. And also this guest that was on that radio show has been an ongoing guest. And it's, as I've stated before in these update episodes, it's hard to take a side in any of this for me. And in fact, I really have not. But so this post has to do with the ongoing, there was like a defamation ruling and everything else. And this radio host, along with this particular guest, have gone right back to what they've been doing for some years now, throwing a lot of allegations out there against Tom's family, everything else. And this was a post about that. But I want to read this bottom part of this post. And it says, to the public, we are working with lawyers as the Rule 11 agreement may not be enforceable. We will be in Canadian Texas re-interviewing a few of the players in the investigation. If you see us, come say hi. Don't be scared. We want you to know that we will get the report released, and the suicide theory just might be thrown out of your minds forever, and the shock of how Tom really died will be revealed. And it says, maybe even the DJ at that radio station will be shocked. We doubt it, as the report makes him look stupid and his used car sales kick stupid as well. We thank you all for supporting the Meeks. As I stated a couple minutes ago, this kind of statement by Phil Klein has been made before, going back to that presentation that he did. It was live streamed. It went on for at least a couple hours way back when. Like I said, it seems to me it was in October. I just don't remember if it was 2022, 2021. The years go by so fast. But he made this kind of declaration years ago, and it went nowhere. And being that I am a person, a writer of millions and millions and millions of words, and have spoken millions and millions of words, I always look for the wiggle room in what people say. And as you know, in disappearances, we always seemingly, not always, but a lot of times we have a lot of wiggle room because we're never really absolutely 100% sure what happened until the person is found, whether dead or alive. And so this seems like a very strong statement at the end, but I will read it again. We want you to know that we will get the report released, and the suicide theory just might be thrown out of your minds. Well, if the facts were so sure that it wasn't suicide, then it wouldn't be just might. It would be the suicide theory will be thrown out of your minds. We might draw an example like Janelle Matthews, who is going to get an update for this episode as well, that when her remains were found, remember, her entire remains weren't found either. But in her remains, unfortunately, her skull was found, and what was it? There was a bullet hole in her head. There's no doubt how she died. She was shot by Steve Pankey or somebody else. No doubt about that. That surely was not a suicide. Janelle Matthews didn't bury herself. That leaves no doubt. That would be if you were thinking Janelle Matthews committed suicide, well, that would surely show that she did not. Any suicide theory for Janelle Matthews would absolutely be thrown out. What it tells me is that I'm continuing to believe that this is just Phil Klein talking. It just might be thrown out of your minds. Well, that means it just might not be thrown out of your minds. Remember, when somebody says it just might, they're also saying what might not. This doesn't sound like incontrovertible, is that the word? Evidence to me. Not to me. Whereas bullet hole in the head like Janelle Matthews is, indisputable evidence. I just think, to me, this all just sounds like more of the same. A lot of declarations, and we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And then when people finally want to tune in, and like I said, I think there are many people who want to believe that Tom was murdered. And they're just thirsting for that evidence, for that scientific piece of evidence. And there continues to be these promises. We're going to show you. We're going to show you. We're going to show you. And every time they say they're going to show the public doesn't get shown anything. And it doesn't have anything to do with law stuff. It doesn't have anything that they're not allowed to do. But this has been going on for years, where there was stuff that seemingly was not under the coverage of any law, and making all sorts of things. We're going to show you what happened to Tom Brown in our presentation, and how it was a gambling deal gone wrong, and it was this and it was that. It was Nathan Lewis, it was Pine Gregory, and then when they do the presentation, everybody comes away thinking, that didn't change. That doesn't make me think he was murdered at all. So for all of you people who are thinking this is going to show whatever this information is, that I don't think it's going to show anything. I just think that this is the way this has gone for a long time. And I continue to say, I don't think we're ever going to be sure what happened to Tom Brown. I personally do not think that he was murdered, but that's just circumstantial. I certainly don't think I've seen anything that's scientific that anything in particular happened, even though we know something particular happened. I don't think we're ever going to know for sure. And it's very sad. I hate it. Hate it. I think it would be a lot better if Tom Brown's remains had been found and there was a bullet in his head. That would be better for everybody. He's dead. There's nothing can be done about that now. He's dead. At least somebody murdered him. Maybe that person's still walking around there. Let's go find him. I'd be all for that. But those aren't the facts. So I wouldn't get your hopes up that we're ever going to have anything definitive, despite all the legal wrangling, despite the problems with Tom's father, despite this DJ and the guest and everything else. I'm going to stick by that. Next update, Shana Boydo. Shana Marie Boydo was a 22-year-old from Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin. She had a daughter and loved playing basketball. On June 22nd of 2016, she was allegedly on a trip to California with her boyfriend Kyle. Not long into their journey near St. Cloud, Minnesota, Shana unexpectedly jumped out of the car and ran off into the woods beside the highway. She was never seen again. Now, before I go any further, because I think, different than most true crime people out there, I'm going to admit I got this one wrong. When this disappearance happened, when we featured this, I'm guessing sometime in 2018. It was after Tom Brown, obviously. After Tom Brown's episode. That I thought that it just sounded like a very, very shaky story that her boyfriend Kyle was saying. They're just driving down the road and he pulls over the side of the road and she walks off or runs off or whatever. That just sounds like a story that was cooked up in the spur of the moment, and I was inclined to believe that something else happened. I now know that I'm wrong. Now, I will tell you this, though. That was probably only 2 years into me reporting on disappearances. And I told in the upcoming interview that you will hear where I appear on Jason Blair's podcast again. Those episodes will be coming out on September 23rd and September 30th. He got back to me on that. I appreciate that, Jason. But he asks me a question. Well, when did you finally start feeling like you were starting to get a pretty good handle on the topic of disappearances? And I told him, I don't think it was until right around the Steve Pankey interview, which occurred in October of 2019. So it took me over 3 years before I started getting an idea of seeing patterns and remembering what people said and how they acted, and started seeing the commonalities between disappearances, and then started looking at them in a way of, well, this disappearance that is unsolved is very much like this, the solved disappearance. What can we learn? Can we use the solved one to look at the unsolved one? This is something that like I said, it took me, what would that have been, like 130 disappearances before I started feeling like, you know what, maybe there is a learning to this, and I'm getting smarter at this, and I'm getting more accurate. I can tell you today, and in fact, just within the past year, we covered a disappearance very much like Shana Boydo's, and that was Dwayne Thomas's. Remember, he's coming back from some club with I don't think they were married, but with his girlfriend, and she claimed they pulled over to the side of the road out there in the middle of nowhere in Arizona, and she claims that he ran off. I can tell you, I think he ran off. Even though I think his family thinks otherwise, I will tell you, I think that he ran off. And since then, since the Shana Boydo episode, when I do think about these predictions that I've made, this is one of those that I was waiting, if she's found, I think I'm going to end up being wrong about this one, because I thought that she had been murdered or overdosed and he covered it up. That is not what happened. I got that one wrong. 2018 Ed got it wrong. 2025 Ed, I'm pretty sure, would get it right. Why? Because people ran off. That's just the way it is. And we learned that in other disappearances that have not been featured on Unfound because they got solved, this happens quite a bit. People are running away from cars all the time. And in fact, there are way more people running away from cars who are being found deceased than there are stories of people running away who then we find out later were actually murdered, and the runoff story was a lie. Very, very clear to me. So I got this one wrong. And what happened with Shana Boydo is that there was some, so you're going to hear this and say, well, that's a very common story. There was a piece of private property near where they had stopped that either it was very difficult to search or they didn't have permission, but her remains were found on private property not far away from the car. I think I looked at it on the map. I forget what it was. It wasn't even a mile away. It was like a quarter mile away, half mile away or something like that. And that's where she was found deceased. And a person, the owner of the property, happened upon her remains by accident in an area where it is not believed that anybody would have carried her body in there and put her there. Just too complicated. Too much could go wrong. Now, what probably happened? I'm guessing that they were probably doing drugs in the car or something, and she started freaking out. Maybe, as they would say, having a bad trip. Kyle pulls over to the side of the road to kind of chill her out. Didn't have any nefarious intentions. Was really just, I think, trying to care for her. And what happens? As soon as the car stops, boom, she's out. Why? Because that's what people on drugs do. If they're paranoid, they're schizophrenic, whatever it makes them feel, I got to get away. I got to get out. I gotta. And they run off. And for her, of course, she was young, but I don't think that really means anything. These drugs, if they up your adrenaline enough, they will kill you. Your heart rate will get up to 150, then 160 beats a minute, then 180, then 200. And guess what? You will be dead. Doesn't matter what your age is. That's an idea. Or she was running along and just through those woods and tripped and hit her head and died right there. I don't think we're ever going to know. Like Tom Brown, I don't know if we're ever going to know for sure. But this was surely not murder. There was no cover-up, unlike what I thought back when we featured this episode. So that happened, and darkly humorously enough, this happened right after the last update episode came out. It's weird. It seems like that happens every time. Update episode comes out. A week later, there will be some sort of finding a body will be found, or somebody even will be found alive right after an update episode, and I'll say, well, the person's still missing. A week later, the person's found either alive or deceased. It just seems to happen that way. Well, this time it was Shana Boydo, and very sad. I don't think anybody really believed that she was still alive out there, but probably did not have to happen this way. But I am you can never be totally sure. But I'm 99.9% sure that there was no foul play. I think she really did run off. I think it involved drugs. And this is one more reason. Don't do drugs. So, there you go. Like I said, not found that far away. What have I said when it comes to searches? Pretty much a mile in any direction from a place a person was last seen. If you believe that person walked off or ran off, going a mile in any direction is usually plenty. It's not perfect, but it's usually plenty. And for Shana Boydo, it was just on private property in a very hidden area. And I appreciate. I think in remembering this news article, I did not print it out to read it, but I think this was a part of this person's property that was not traversed too much. I think this person owned quite a bit of property, had not been out in that area since Shana went missing in 2016, was out there in that area. I guess this person must own acres and acres and acres and acres, and was just happened to be in this particular area and ran across her bones. So very sad. But that is the disappearance to discovery of Shana Boydo. Next update, Eric Alvarado. Eric Thomas Alvarado was a 32-year-old from Atlanta, Texas. He was built like a football player, but was actually a skilled artist. In the early morning of November 20th, 2018, Eric seemingly got into his Jeep with his two dogs and left his home. It was presumed his destination was the 24-hour Walmart. He was never seen again. To remind you, eventually, his Jeep was found over the border into Arkansas, Texarkana area of Texas and Arkansas. And the Jeep was abandoned, and very sadly, both of his dogs were found dead, both of them having been hit by cars. And his is one that when I've done college presentations, I have talked about Eric's disappearance, and no matter where I've gone, no matter what school it's been, the dogs seemingly get more emotional attention than Eric does, or dare I say, more than any of the people that I talk about. As soon as I mention the dogs getting hit by cars and dying, every student in the class goes, "Aw." They never say that about any of the humans. It's just, I guess, the way humans are. Anyway, the update here is that remains have been found in that area along a creek bed, and this is just within the past month, so surely not enough time for DNA to be done. As we've learned the hard way on Unfound, sometimes DNA tests take a year. Backlogs all over the United States. I think at both the state and the federal level. And yes, there are ones that get put to the front, but it usually has to do with situations where there were murders and DNA is going to be needed for a trial or something like that. My perception is that those get moved to the front of the line, whereas when remains are found out in the middle of nowhere, and they're going to try to determine who is this, and then hopefully the DNA is in a database somewhere. You just have to wait. That's just the way it is. But remains or partial remains or a couple bones, I don't think it was a skull. I don't know what exactly bones of the human body they were. But it was big news in that area. And given that this is in the general area where Eric went missing, sort of popped up, wondering if these remains could be Eric. The ongoing story with that, going back to the story, was that his Jeep was found. his flip-flops or whatever, shoes were there, the keys to the Jeep were like hung on a gate or a fence or something that was right there. And I believe the Jeep was out of gas, but it also had stopped not far from this bridge over this river. And the idea was, well, could he have jumped in? It wasn't like some high bridge, but could have been high enough. And of course, there are also people who think that Eric actually didn't drive out there. Could something have happened and somebody else drove his Jeep out there with the dogs and left it there and allowed the dogs to get hit by cars and everything? I doubt it. Now, there was a controversy because the next door neighbor to the Alvarados was the investigator. That sounds a little too close to home to me. And the Alvarados, Eric was involved in some illegal drug business, so we have to put that in there as well. But at this point, I continue to believe that it was Eric that drove his Jeep out there. I don't know what he was going through and why he would allow his dogs to be hit like that. Of course, much more recently, we had the disappearance of Jerry McCulloch, who drove the whole way, from Louisiana the whole way to Indiana or Illinois with his dogs. And then he went missing. His dogs were fortunately still in the vehicle and were not harmed. Eric's were running around and got hit by cars, dead. Very sad. I will try to keep tabs on this. This information. We'll find out if these bones are Eric's or not. Next update, Julie Wlin. Kinda. Julianne Wlin was a 28-year-old from Deer Park, Washington. She worked for the Bonneville Power Administration and loved the outdoors. On September 16th, 1987, on her way home, Julie stopped at a substation to make sure it was working correctly. Julie never made it home. She was never seen again. It's kind of an update on Julie simply because there is now a book out. And if you'll remember, earlier this summer, I interviewed the author. The book is called Vanished in the Pacific Northwest. The mysterious true story of 4 women who vanished without a trace. I interviewed the author. His name is Doug Eastwood. This is a book that contains Julie's disappearance along with Catherine Gregory's, Deborah Swanson's, and Sally Stone's. Going back to when I did feature Julie's back, it must have been in 2019, when John Polos was the guest, who is a co-worker of Julie's, and he continues to work on her disappearance when he can. He's a very busy guy, and he does know Doug, the author of this book. They've spoken, I think, many times. I included, with Julie's disappearance, that was the main focus, along with Catherine Gregory's and Deborah Swanson's. We did not, however, back at that time, talk about Sally Stone's, which was actually more of a topic this summer, being that she was the new woman being mixed in with the other 3. I will tell you that the book, regarding the book, I got it and read it. I think it's good. Some of you have gotten back to me, and I understand what you're saying. There is a lot of, I don't know what you'd call it, exposition in the book, that there are a lot of made up, I guess we would say, made up conversations. No different than if you see some sort of reenactment on, the disappeared episodes that were popular many years ago, or Unsolved Mysteries where they do reenactments. This book has conversations that are reenactments, and surely these conversations did not take place as is written. This is Doug getting a little creative, dare I say. I think the facts in the book are correct. I'm not saying he's lying about any of the facts or exaggerated any of the facts, but he tied together all of those facts with exposition and conversations that I don't know if we really know if those conversations ever really took place, or if they did, that those were the exact words used. And some of you have brought that up to me. Yeah, not what I would have done, but I've learned now that I've read a few books like this is very popular to do. I don't know what you can do about that. Like I said, it's not something I would do. And of course, I've written books, some of the Unfound books that are really just transcriptions of the interviews that I've done. We don't get into any exposition or creativity in those books at all. If you don't care for that, then I guess you'll have a problem with this book. But I do think if you want to learn about these 4 disappearances, of course, listen to the Unfound episode regarding Julie and Deborah and Catherine, and then more recently Sally. Maybe reading it might give you a little bit of a different point of view or something, just so all of you know. Might be still interesting to get the book just because. Having said all of that and read this book, none of my opinions have changed on any of these disappearances. I continue to believe that Will Parks is not a very good suspect for the disappearance of Julie or Deborah. He surely had nothing to do with the disappearance of Catherine Gregory. I have to believe that her husband was involved in that. My opinion. It's an opinion. Regarding Julie, my opinion is that it was a coworker who caused her disappearance. With Deborah, despite Doug being very familiar with that park and diagramming what could have happened in the park, it very well could have been of course, the student that she had who they encountered her there in that park that day, and the student later said that I left, was it her stepfather or somebody? They were arguing about something. I don't know whether I'm supposed to believe any of that or not. The story didn't come out till years later, and who knows if she had a bone to pick with her stepfather. I have no idea. It's just a little too perfect, to be honest, and I get suspicious when stories like this are a little too quaint, just fit into that spot just a little too easily. Of all of these, in my opinion, Deborah's is the one that is the hardest to determine. I think Julie's was a coworker. I think Catherine's was her husband at the time. We've seen this pattern over and over, and with a Catherine Gregory type of disappearance. And then when it's Sally Stone, I think the best suspect at this point, after reading the book, my opinion, is whoever the cop was that she was babysitting for. That's my insight. But Deborah's hard to say. And it very well may be, did somebody really attack her in the park and take her out of there? Could have happened. It seems more likely if there were an attack, it would have happened when she got back to her car. Then why didn't anybody see it? Was it dark? These are things that are hard to calculate in my mind. But of those 4, Deborah's is the hardest to calculate. You have my opinion on the other 3. Will Parks, certainly a unique guy, maybe not even a very good guy, but I think that the reason everybody pointed the finger at him back in the day is because they simply didn't like him as a neighbor. Well, just because you're a bad neighbor doesn't make you a killer. So it's confirmation bias and just people's opinions because they don't like somebody. They don't know any of the facts or anything. So that's where we are, but the book is out. You want to check it out. Once again, it's called Vanished in the Pacific Northwest, The Mysterious True Story of 4 Women Who Vanished Without a Trace. The author is Doug Eastwood. I interviewed him a few months ago. Next update, Jodi Huisentruit was a 27-year-old from Mason City, Iowa. She was a reporter and had dreams of hosting a national news show. In the early morning hours of June 27th, 1995, Jodi left for work. However, she never arrived. Jodi's possessions would later be found strewn across her apartment's parking lot. She was never seen again. Due to some promises I have made for confidentiality, I cannot tell you what the conversation I had was and who it was with. But hopefully you've listened to all of the Find Jodi podcast episodes. There are many. I think there are 30 some of them. Going way back. Last one they published, it's been a while, but I think there were 30 some of them, I think. And I think that if you listen to all of them, you might be able to pick up on the person who I wanted to talk to that was also a guest on their podcast. And I guess you could say in so many words, I got permission to contact this person who had spoken to findjodi.com. And I talked to this person off the record myself. And I did this because they do fine work over at findjodi.com. I have no problems with anything they do over there. But I also know that given that I've had the opportunity to interview 370 some people, way more than that actually, when you really get down to it, about disappearances, I'm a specialist in that particular category of questioning people. They have very capable reporters over there, Caroline Lowe, etc., but they don't have as much experience talking one-on-one for extended periods of time, over and over, in detail about hundreds of disappearances like I do. And I thought, well, you know what? I really want to talk to this person because I think there's something about it that catches my ear, and I want to talk to this person. And the interview that was done on their podcast, maybe 15, 20 minutes or something like that. And it might have been edited or something. I have no idea. I ended up being able to talk to this person for like an hour. And what I did was I recorded it with this, not a guest, because he's not going to be on Unfound or any other podcast. It's not going to play. But I recorded it and then sent it to the people at Find Jodi so they could listen to it for themselves. Because I don't think that when they talked to this person that they got as deep down into the weeds as I wanted to get with this person. And I went into it with kind of an idea trying to, this idea that I had, is this idea crazy or is it not crazy? And after talking to this person, I came away thinking, you know what? This idea is not as crazy as I thought. Now, probably going in, the chances of this being true, probably single digits percentage. After talking to this person, that percentage went up. It didn't go up to 50% or 40% or 30%, but it went up. Simply because of what this person said. This person surely has no idea what happened to Jodi. I don't want any of you to think this person surely had nothing to do with her disappearance. But this person was in a position that was very unique regarding her disappearance. So I got to talk to this person, recorded it, and gave it to them so they could add it to their records. And they are the experts in Jodi's disappearance. I am not. And hopefully they can use it in some way. I think it really, really does open up an avenue of inquiry. Because really, of course, there's been nothing. Nothing has been going on with Jodi's disappearance at all. My opinion is that Mason City, when they put those trackers on John Van Sice's vehicle back in, 2016, 2017, totally grasping at straws. Totally. My opinion. I just don't think that John Van Sice makes a very good suspect. There are no facts that rule him out. other than to say the timeline seems to be kind of tight with him, given that he did go walking with this woman that morning, if you want to believe her. But she lied to him, I don't know. But just seems unlikely to me. And so we must look at other people. And there have been a variety of people looked at, nothing scientific. I continue to believe that whoever did this is somebody who did this once, never did it before, never did it since. Somebody that Jodi was targeted. She didn't know who her abductor was, but he definitely knew who she was. And we're a situation, the guy could have gone right back to his life, never done this again, some obsession, something like that. I'm still in that category with her disappearance. And what was interesting is, how do I put this? Over the years, going way back, well before Unfound got started, going way back to the early days of findjodi.com, where I was one of the first people to be in the forum on that website way, I don't know, 20 years ago or something like that. And it's even been written on Web Sleuths and other places, is that there seemed to be kind of a time element. What kind of person would wait around like that? When the person surely knew when she was supposed to be going to work and would wait around for like an hour because she was late. It seems like a person who just had to get it done that morning. And in talking to the person that I did, it's just happened within the last couple weeks, it actually lends more credence, support to that idea. Once again, the person I talked to has nothing to do with her disappearance. Surely. That's all I can say. I'm just hoping that people at findjodi.com found it helpful. They're the ones who are working on it. I am not. But it was just something that caught my ear and I wanted to do and finally got to do it. And if it's not fruitful for findjodi.com, it was certainly fruitful for me and my own curiosities. So there you go. That's all. Unfortunately, I apologize. That's all I can say. I made promises to this person before I talked to this person, and I'm going to keep to them. Next update, Brenda Condon. Brenda Louise Condon was a 28-year-old from State College, Pennsylvania. She was a divorced mother of two and had her own business in the early morning hours of February 27th of 1991 in Bellefonte, Pennsylvania. I think that's how you pronounce it. Brenda was the lone bartender at a place where she had just gotten part-time work. When employees came in the next day, the bar was unlocked. Her car was still there, but there were no signs of Brenda. She was never seen again. This is a disappearance that Ken Maines has brought a lot of attention to this, maybe over the last year, talking about how the bar was left and the money being on the barn, on all of that. He is well-versed in disappearances and murders in that part of Pennsylvania. I just simply grew up in Western Pennsylvania. But the update, very sadly, and I hate myself because it took me this long to find out, but Brenda's sister, who was the guest, her name is Iris Myers, she died last year. And it was one of those things, as I continue to say, time goes by so fast. And there was something that had happened. In fact, I even might have included it in an update episode early last year of 2024, so like a year and a half ago. Something went on. Did somebody contact me? I don't forget the exact circumstances. But I ended up contacting Iris. Now, you should know that she moved to Florida. Not near me. She lived over in central part of Florida. Never did. I did meet her in person when she first moved here. All right, just so you know. I did meet her in person. one of the few guests that I've met in person. And so I called her. I went back and checked my phone records in May of 2024 about something that somebody had sent me. And had she ever heard of this before? And she said no. And I said, well, why don't you talk to Ken about it? I think I might have even tried to contact Ken about it. Or maybe I went through her. I can't remember. But she said that she would talk to Ken about it once again because Ken has been much more on Brenda's disappearance than I have. As you know, I'm not an expert on any particular one disappearance, where Ken seems to have his like 5 or 6 or 7 that, he continues to work on and talk about on his channel on YouTube. Well, in talking to Iris in May of 2024, she had disclosed to me that she had pancreatic cancer. And we all know about that. We know that a lot of different cancers out there. That is one of the ones that, not incurable, but your survival rate of getting rid of it totally, you have like a 10% chance. And talked to her. We had a good conversation. When somebody tells you something like that, how are you supposed to react? I don't know. And so just went into the summer 2024. She did get back to me and saying that Ken had not heard about this, and I still don't know if Ken did anything with this information. I have no idea. And then, of course, myself, I had some sleep issues the end of this past year, and I'm doing great, by the way. Sleeping well these days, getting a lot of good sleep. No snoozes during the day. Whatever sleep I'm getting during the night is plenty. And then I don't know what it was. It was just within the last couple weeks, I was like, yeah, she did tell me that. And I know that I had a guy, his name's Paul Harrell, who ran a really, really good YouTube channel for guns. He died of pancreatic cancer, I think it was last year. He went on there and talked about his diagnosis. And like I said, we're all adults here. We all know about this. And so I ended up looking her up and found out that she died almost exactly from a year ago from when I'm doing this. I think she died on August 22nd of 2024. So I talked to her in May, so 3 months after I spoke to her, she died, I guess, of that cancer. It took me a year to find out. I hate that. I own up to it. I hate it. Nobody should ever think that I'm perfect. But I hate it. It just at this time, 300 some guests, it's hard to keep track of what everybody is doing in their own lives. Some of them, of course, I see them on Facebook, and then some aren't on any social media at all. So then that becomes a lot tougher. But yeah, she died. So that is, I didn't count them up before I started recording. We're into double digits of unfound guests who have passed away. Of course, that started way back with the sister of Tyler Stice. So very sad. Iris Myers did everything I think she could to try to find out what happened to her sister Brenda. I do think that I agree with Ken Maines that I think he thinks that this guy who is in jail in Ohio did it, like a serial killer. I didn't write his name down here, but I think that's what Ken thinks happened. I think I agree with him. Just bad crossing of paths between Brenda and this guy, her being alone there. But, Iris died a year ago. Very sad. Liked her a lot. It was one of those things, thinking back at it, she must have been on Unfound sometime in 2019 into 2020, but I had been talking to her, and I think that might have even come up in our interview. I'd been talking to her for a couple years. And then I think that the way I remember it is, I think finally she decided to do it after she met me in person. Like I said, she moved to Florida to live permanently, of course, well before she was ever diagnosed with cancer. And I think after she met me is when, okay, we'll do it. I think she needed to see me in person. Sometimes people are like that. But we spoke for a long time before we actually did that interview for that episode. So I liked Iris a lot. And very sad. Sorry that I didn't find out about her death sooner. That's my fault. Next update, Brian Schaefer. Brian Randall Schaefer, was a 27-year-old from Columbus, Ohio. He was in medical school, and his mother died not long before he went missing at around 2 a.m. April 1st of 2006. Brian's friends prepared to leave a bar they had visited together. They called him, but Brian never responded. He was never seen again. I think this was an update back in April and maybe even before that one. I forget how long. But something continues to be worked on, although I am not doing the work. Something that somebody else is trying to put together that I think would be fantastic regarding Brian's disappearance. Really, really fantastic. But it's completely out of my hands. But I hope it happens. I think it... No. It would... all I can say is it would be pretty good. And I have an agreement with the person that's working on this that I would have first dibs on the work that this person is doing. And like I said, totally out of my hands. I inquire about it once in a while, but that is it. I'm hopeful. It could happen tomorrow. It could happen a year from now. Maybe it won't happen at all. But this person's doing a very professional job. It's a very touchy work regarding Brian's disappearance. And I hope it works out. Not just because I run a podcast, but I think that this would really clear up a lot regarding Brian's disappearance. I continue to believe that there's no foul play regarding Brian's disappearance. Very well could be. I think about the recent episodes of The Consult with the murder of Karina Holmer. That's, as a person who just does disappearances, I can tell you that if somebody happened upon her upper torso in that trash bin, and it was just a missing persons case, then I would think maybe she just strolled off drunk somewhere and just hasn't been found yet. Well, we now know, because the remains were found, that she was murdered. It's just very, very, so much wiggle room in disappearances like that. Maybe, we could say that about Kyle Fleischman, Justin Gaines, to name a couple, where they've gone out to bars and are leaving and they're never seen again. Of course, no remains are found. You think, well, these guys walked off. Well, that's what I probably would have thought of regarding Karina. But nope, she was murdered. And if the garbage truck had come before somebody happened upon her remains, would still be thinking that when she was surely murdered and somebody actually cut her up. So going back to Brian, is it possible that somebody killed him and put him in a trash bin somewhere and nobody saw him in there before the garbage trucks came along? Yeah, it's possible. It is. I don't know how likely it is, but it's possible. I just think, odds-wise, that we're still in the territory of it being overwhelmingly more likely that just something went on with Brian, and this is just a situation of a guy who was drunk and walked off and simply hasn't been found yet, and there was no foul play. I continue to believe that. And, of course, I did that video that has gotten a lot of views, that he put something in that girl's purse or that young woman's purse that night. It certainly does seem like it. He's reaching around her and slipping something in there. Don't know. And people continue to comment on that video. I did that years ago now. So somebody's working on something. This person I know very, very well. And if it happens, I've been told that I will get first dibs on publicizing this information, and I know this person is good for this person's words. Person's very trustworthy. That's all I can say. I know you hate me teasing like that, but these are the things that go on behind the scenes when I'm not putting this Friday's podcast together. Next update, Julianne Gille. Julianne Cecilia Gille was a 36-year-old from Bellevue, Washington. She was the mother of one and loved Fleetwood Mac. Who doesn't? In late May of 1985, Julianne's parents lost contact with her. 3 weeks later, Julianne's husband told everyone she had left him. She was never seen again. Maybe the most noteworthy fact about her disappearance is that eventually her purse was found on an upper floor of a hotel. Was it in Reno? I think it was in Reno. With no explanation of how it got there. Well, the news, the update is that very recently her daughter has been doing some great work regarding her mother's disappearance. She's had contacts with police, and they seem to be getting back with her. She's had meetings with them. And, I mean, you have to remember, this is a disappearance from 1985. And she is still getting attention from them, maybe new attention. I think that there was maybe a long period when there was no conversation between them at all. But Tamara, Julianne's daughter, is doing some fantastic work. As good a work from a family member for a disappearance as old as this one that I know of any of Unfound's disappearances, to be honest with you. We know 40 years later, man, it's just like, wow, the disappearance might as well be 100 years ago. But that she's on them, she's getting attention, she's getting meetings with them. That is really, really saying something. So everybody should be following the Facebook page for Julianne Gille's Jaillet, if you want to follow it, to see what Tamara has been putting there. And for all you families out there that have disappearances that are that old, and you're like, man, we're stumped. Just follow what Tamara has been doing and how relentless she has been. And I give her all the credit in the world. She and I have had some conversations back and forth. She's told me at least a little bit of what's going on and points that have popped up. It'd probably be no surprise when I say I continue to believe that Julianne's husband at the time continues to be the best suspect in her disappearance. There's nothing that Tamara has told me that changes my mind. Although, on the other hand, I think I can say there's nothing that Tamara has told me of everything that's going on recently that there's any more facts to support that idea either, or that theory either. So, but follow. There's been developments, especially the last few months, with her working, her posting, what she's been doing. Go to her Facebook page, the Julianne Gille Facebook page. I urge you to do that to see some good work by a family member. Next update, Leanne Hausberg. Leanne Marie Hausberg was a 14-year-old from Brooklyn, New York. She was Native American and had two younger twin sisters. On March 18th, 1999, Leanne left for school as she usually did. That afternoon, she didn't return home. Her parents eventually determined Leanne never reached school that day. She was never seen again. To go along with that explanation, you might remember that I think there was pretty good proof that she had gone to some car service and it paid or something to take her somewhere, and that's where everybody lost track of her. You might remember that there was some older guy, like in his 20s, who might have shown a little too much interest in her. Remember, she was only 14 years old, but, here we are 26 years later. It didn't seem to go anywhere. So, and of course, it's still missing. She's still missing 26 years later. And you might also remember that, she had these friends around her age at the time who these days, At least one of them even refuses to even acknowledge she even knows who Leanne Hausberg is. So a lot of really, really unusual stuff. And this is one of those reasons I keep bringing it up, that I have to selectively pick which child disappearances I cover because of stuff like this. Now, why am I bringing up Leanne? Is there an update? Well, I just want to give you an example of what not to do when you are contacting me. If you think you have information, you've heard an episode, you've decided to take a look at it yourself. And of course, I urge people to do that tactfully and modestly and avoiding the sensationalism and everything else. Unlike what has been done in some of these disappearances, like, for example, going back to Tom Brown's, everybody who got involved after Unfound's episode came out, it just got so crazy and, just insane. That's the opposite of what I'm talking about, of what I would like. So, back in the beginning of July, I'm not going to use any names of who emailed me. In fact, I am sure, pretty sure that I have never spoken to this person before, but this person emailed me, and I'm going to read the email. By the way, anybody who ever emails me, no matter if it's good or bad, it can automatically become public information if I would like. All right, I make no guarantees. Unless I've specifically told you I won't make it public, then there's a possibility that whatever you write me or whatever might become public, just as a warning. So somebody emailed me, this is what not to do if you want to talk to me about a disappearance. And you say you have information, don't do this. So this person said, hey, I've got a couple updates to your video on Leanne Marie Hausberg. Things that weren't in the Hulu documentary. Now, you should know I've not seen this documentary. I do not have Hulu. I was wondering if you'd be able to get on a Discord call maybe tonight or this weekend if you're able. First of all, I don't talk to people if I don't know who you are. I don't just... I once in a while, I'll get like an email like, hey, I have information on this disappearance. Call me. Don't do that. I don't know who you are. I don't know if you're telling the truth. I don't know if this is a prank. I don't know. So my standard reply, and nobody should ever take this personally, is you tell me what you want to say, you email it to me, and then I'll determine whether we need to talk or not. And granted, I know that sounds like a blow-off, but I will tell you, some people have done that, and there have been some people where I do end up having a constructive conversation, and maybe even a couple of those ended up becoming phone calls. But if you're going to email me with information, and you're not going to tell me what the information is right in the first email, and then say, hey, I want to talk to you about it, call me or get on a Discord call or whatever, I'm not going to do that. Never. Never. If I don't know you. Now, if you're a former guest, different. If you're another podcast host, and I know it's, I can verify that it's actually that podcast host, even if I've never talked to that person before, kinda, maybe, sorta, that might happen. Maybe other people that I've talked to that didn't make it on air or something. But if you're just emailing me out of the blue and saying, yeah, I want to talk to you, let's do a Discord call, call me, I'm not going to do that. So I told this person, new Leanne news, that would be interesting. And I have to be honest, I didn't even know she was included in a Hulu documentary. That's still true. Or maybe I forgot. I told this person, but I don't get on Discord calls. You can just email me the info and I'll take a look at it. I promise I won't make it public. This person replies, and once again, this is not what you should do. Do not do this. So I've said, you send me information, I will look at it. And I want all of you to know I'm always genuine with that. I will look at it. I can't promise anything, but I will look at it. I will read it and determine it for myself, whether it's serious or you're just a prankster or whatever else. This person said, it's a lot and I'm not really willing to type it all out. I would really prefer to get into Discord call tonight if you're able. This is not happening. When somebody tells me it's not worth typing all out, then I have to think, well, what's going on here? And then we have to do it tonight. It doesn't, I get all sorts of heebie-jeebies when people say, well, it's too complicated to type out and we have, Discord tonight. Well, her disappearance is 26 years old. I don't think there's any rush. I mean, I want her to be found. Don't get me wrong. Tonight, tomorrow at the latest. But you saying tonight twice gets the yellow flags and maybe even red flags. My spidey sense starts going off. Don't do this to me. Maybe other true crime hosts, YouTube, podcasters, whoever, maybe they do this. Maybe they do entertain people like this. Oh, yeah, I'll call you right away. That's not what I do. It just doesn't seem smart to me. Too many pranksters out there, too many scam artists, too many weird people out there, too many kooks. They sound genuine, and then maybe I get on, this has never happened, but get on the phone and then they start talking about how they've had visions and everything. I'm not doing that. Never. But I'll promise you, you send me information that seems viable and it's typed out and it's well-reasoned and everything else. I don't know if we'll end up talking on the phone, but we'll have a constructive email back and forth. I promise you. But already 2 messages in, from this person, I already have the heebie-jeebies. I've been doing this for 9 years, and a lot of craziness out there in the true crime community. A lot of my guests have been scammed, and the dark web, and give me $5,000, and I'll get your daughter off of some auction for girls that it's going on. They've fallen for all sorts of stuff. Okay, this is what goes on. It's better to just be cautious. And then the person says, well, I don't care if you make it public. And once again, I start thinking, well, what are we talking about here? Exactly. And I told him, I don't get on calls when I don't know what they're going to say. I don't personally know you. It's just not something I do. And I told this person, my criteria is always with everyone. You tell me what you know, then I'll decide if we need to talk. That's been the standard for 9 years, and it will continue to be that way. And then this person finally writes it out. I'm not going to tell you because I don't know if any of this is true or not. But I can't say that I was surprised by what this person wrote. I would call it somewhat conspiratorial. This is a person who admits that this person just started looking into the Leanne's disappearance a couple months ago. Remember, it's 26 years old. Very sad. But admits that just came, and then suddenly it sounds like, the person gave me his name. I'm not telling you what his name is. And he says, just a few months in, I've uncovered a plethora of lies that you've been told. And here's what I ended up telling him. And then he didn't write back to me after all of that. And this is also something that all of you can learn who ever want to contact me. My final email, and he did not respond to this, was if you have information that you believe, if you've collected this information and you believe it to be true, just take it to NYPD. This is of course, this is a disappearance in New York City. Just take it to them. I don't need to see it. Go run with it. Figure out what happened. I hope you succeed. That's what I told this person. At that point, I'm just a middleman. And this is also one of the things that when people want to talk to me too much, and say, oh, I got information. I've already covered the disappearance to the best of my ability. I'm willing to look at information. But if you're really, 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 really wanting to solve this disappearance and you have good information and everything, you're probably talking to the wrong person. That's not to put down myself, but I'm not the police. I can't get any warrants. I can't subpoena anybody. I can't handcuff anybody. I'm a reporter, and I'm here to help people, and I'm here to publicize disappearances and give these people good advice. But if you have a new piece of information, I'm a middleman. Just go to the end user, and that would be the police. Just take it to them. It's okay. If you believe it, now I will tell you, I'm not necessarily believing what this person wrote in this email. I will tell all of this. I could be wrong. But if this person believes it and has proof that stuff out there is not true, just take it to NYPD. They can do much more with it than I can. And that I didn't get a response from this person saying, you know what, Ed, you're right. You know what, I'm going to do that. All right, well, I'm going to mull this over. Before I do anything, I'll let you know what my decision is. That he never responded to me in any way regarding any of it, and that was at the beginning of July. This is almost 2 months ago. That tells me that my instincts were correct. You know, I want to get on a Discord call tonight. I don't get on Discord. I think I've been on Discord once in my life, and I think it was like disc golf or something. I don't get on Discord. You know, and I don't call people who I don't know. Now, I reach out to people. You know, I know who I'm calling and everything. I don't know who this person is. All sorts of scam artists and everything else. I'm not necessarily saying this person is necessarily a scam artist, but could be just somebody who really doesn't know talking about. You get on there, who the heck knows? I could be getting suckered into something, you know, regarding child porn. I'm just so cynical about all of this and leery and maybe even a bit paranoid that this is the reason I act the way I do when I get emails like this. So if you have real information, awesome. If you think you have new, good, solid information about the disappearance, I'm so proud of you. You don't need to contact me about it. Just go to the police. If you want to tell me about it, that's fine. Just email me. Don't tell me, well, I got information, call me. Don't do that. I'm not calling you. I'm not doing that. Now, if you do tell me the information and I think it's solid, I have a responsibility to tell my guest about it. If I think it's solid, I don't have a responsibility to tell my guest just because you want me to tell my guest about it. I will be the determiner of what you go. I'm not going to pass along information that is obviously kook stuff. I'm not going to do that. My guests get enough of that. But if you have real information, go to the police. If you want to talk to me, I love talking to listeners. Don't act like this person did. All right, so that's Leanne Hausberg, and I don't know what came of any of this. I have no idea. And like I said, being that this person never gave me an update after I made a suggestion to do so, and okay, I'm fine with that too. I have 374 other disappearances that are on my mind. I realize some of those have been solved, but you know what I mean. Moving on. Next update, Paul David Sanders was a 17-year-old from Mesa, Arizona. He was originally from Missouri and very athletic. On August 14th of 2001, I forgot how long ago this disappearance is, the person may or may not have been Paul, driving Paul's truck was pulled over by law enforcement in Tucson. A chase ensued in which the driver escaped. The truck was later found wrecked several miles away with no signs of Paul. He was never seen again. I have assistant Carrie, and there is another woman. Her real name is Jill. I'm not going to give out her last name, but she has. I've gotten to know her very, very well, even though she's technically not one of my assistants who I bounce ideas off of. But she has been a think tank member for, I think, as long as the think tank has existed. Patreon.com/Unfound Podcast if you'd like to be a part of that. But Carrie and Jill continue to work on Paul's disappearance, and in fact, just recently they were posting some information, and I just wanted to give a shout out to them that they continue to do good work. It's very frustrating work. You should know, I've not had any part in this. They are doing this on their own. They give me an update on what's going on once in a while. More Jill actually telling me about what's going on than Carrie. That's fine. I'm not sure what to make of all of it at this point. There may be some reasons to think that it wasn't Paul driving the truck that day. They've certainly found out that this whole thing about how they stopped the chase because the weather was so bad, that ended up not being true. So there were items that were in the episode where Paul's sister was the guest, just taking what the police had to say about the whole thing. It's clear that police were not entirely forthcoming or maybe even lied a little bit to Paul's sister about what exactly went on that day. I'm not here to go to conspiracy land that the police covered up Paul's disappearance, and I'm not saying that. I'm saying that they might have used some constructive reasons on why they didn't continue the pursuit. Maybe it was just because they didn't feel like it, and there was no rainstorm, something like that. Nothing criminally conspiratorial. But there could be reasons to believe that Paul wasn't driving. I don't know if I'm there yet, but I know Jill and Carrie really had to wade through some jurisdictional issues because, he's from Mesa, but it happened in Tucson, then the truck's found somewhere else, and all these other jurisdictions that the truck went through to get to where it was eventually found, on and on and on. We got sheriffs, we got local police, yada, yada, yada. And Jill and Carrie have gotten along with some of these jurisdictions just fine, and then others not so well, but they continued to work on this, of course, with assistance from Paul's sister, who was the guest for that episode. So maybe one of these days we're going to find out what happened to Paul Sanders. Jill, Carrie, and Paul's sister all together will figure this out with just a little help from the police. Maybe it's not a circumstance where he fled and wrecked the truck and ran off into the desert and died somewhere. Maybe something else did happen. Maybe. Next update, Tony Schwarz. Guy Carlton Schwarz, Tony to those who knew him best, was a 29-year-old from Battle Creek, Michigan. He was a big guy who had played football. On December 6th, 1986, Tony, his friend Dennis, and another man allegedly set out from the Bahamas to bring a powerboat to Florida. They never arrived. They were never seen again. The update here is that at some point, I'm hoping it's going to get done, we're going to be doing, Assistant Eric has been working on this. We're going to do a series, I'm intending on doing a series, on disappearances off the Atlantic coast of Florida. And this all got started from two disappearances of two young women who went missing back in 1984. I think I've brought them up at least on the live show a couple times. And I've been interested in their disappearances for quite a while. Well, this project has kind of expanded. Originally, when I spoke to Eric about this project, and keep in mind, I'd given this project to many people in the past, and just to put it bluntly, they all failed at it. Eric has done spectacularly with this. And the disappearances of Teresa Hickman and Angela Westbury are two that for some reason have really stuck with me for many, many, many years. Eric has done an immense amount of work, fantastic work. And what has happened, though, is that we've had a little what we might call mission creep. You can look that up. It's a term that arose during the Vietnam War. this project has gotten bigger and bigger and bigger, and now it entails not just Teresa and Angela's disappearances, but other disappearances similar to theirs that have seemingly happened off the coast, not on the coast, not in Jacksonville or Daytona Beach, or actually on land, but actually out in the waters to the east of Florida. And, of course, Tony Schwarz would fall into that category, so I intend to include him in this series. And when I say a series, it's more of a long form like Payne Lindsay did for Tara Grinstead episodes, podcasts like that, something different, in which I'm hoping that I will interview at least one person from the Coast Guard, because these are all their cases, by the way. And we're in the process of waiting for a FOIA response as I record this on August 26th of 2025. Hopefully get to interview at least one person with the Coast Guard. Interview at least one person in Angela's family. I don't know how successful I'm going to be interviewing anybody in Teresa's. Her father has died, and her mother, if she is not dead yet, she is very, very elderly, maybe even in her 90s. And Teresa has, I think it's a sister who I've discovered I don't think wants to have anything to do with any of this. But we'll, of course, replay the interview that I did with Tony's sister. Maybe she'd like to be interviewed all brand new again. And she knows all about this, by the way. And I'll interview Eric about this and see who else I can put into this long-form series. So we're working diligently at this. And as I've stated before, I don't know if it was on an update episode, but on the live shows that I do on Monday nights, what Eric has discovered about Teresa and Angela's disappearances is going to blow your minds. I'm telling you. Because it blew my mind. That's how I know it's going to blow all of your minds. It blew my mind because I thought, well, I had a pretty good handle on it. Nope. Not at all. And nobody out there has uncovered this stuff. Eric, like I said, working, talking to the Coast Guard, building rapport with them, and it's gone very smoothly. But we're still waiting for the official paperwork. And it's one of those things that not only does the Coast Guard have to approve it, but Homeland Security and everything else. Before it gets into our hands. I'm crossing my fingers it'll go well, and I hope when we get it, it's not all redacted. It's all crossed out and everything. So we're continuing to work on that, and Tony's disappearance will certainly be a part of this. I don't know if they're all connected, but let's just say they probably all went missing for the same reason. How about that? Moving on. Next update. Richard Hitchcock. Of course, now you can tell we're getting very close to the present. Richard Eugene Dale Hitchcock was a 21-year-old from Allegan, Michigan. He was an easygoing guy who liked to hunt and fish. In the early morning of December 22nd of 1990, Richard allegedly ran off, vaulted 2 fences, and jumped into the Kalamazoo River. He was never seen again. The update here is that Kelly, who was my original point person for Richard's disappearance, continues to do work behind the scenes. I don't know how much I can really say about it. But we just had a conversation within the last few days, past week, about work she's continuing to do. You might remember that she had talked about doing some digging and, of course, with the belief that Richard really didn't go into the river and that things did not happen the way that those 3 witnesses said, that Richard went over one fence that had barbed wire at the top, then went over another fence that had barbed wire at the top, and then went into the river. Maybe something else happened, and maybe Richard ended up at a house, and was he buried there? And I'm not sure that I'm buying in, but certainly there's a lot of work being done in that direction. And I'm just here to tell you that that work is going on even since the episode came out. I don't think anything of note has been found, but the work continues to be done. And given that this disappearance is 35 years old, that people are still out there like Kelly getting shovels and doing whatever else, ground penetrating radar and all of that, and putting in this work, that is more than most, maybe more than any disappearance that is that old. So I give her all the credit in the world for that. I'm not sure it's necessarily in the right direction, but I'm not sure what else can be done at this point, given what I think I know about this disappearance. So I give her a lot of credit. If only all the other 35-year-old disappearances were getting as much work done and as much attention. Next update, Tiffany Reed. Tiffany Reed was a 16-year-old from Shiprock, New Mexico. She was Native American and had several siblings. On the morning of May 17th, 2004, Tiffany left for her walk to school, knowing she would be late. She never arrived. A week later, some of Tiffany's belongings were found along a highway in Arizona. She was never seen again. You might remember that her sister was the guest, and that Tiffany went in to ask her sister for a ride to school. The sister said, hey, I'm sleeping here. The school is right down the street. You can walk. And it seems that Tiffany did exactly that, but she never made it to school that day, and that's why it took so long for anybody to realize that she was missing. After the episode came out, a listener who shall be unnamed brought up a very good point. And what are we kind of always looking for in disappearances? Kind of those things that are they coincidences or are they not? For example, going back to Brian Schaefer, being that he was mentioned in this update episode, is it a coincidence that Brian seemingly was not seen on video leaving the Ugly Tuna, but then he goes missing the same night? Are those two things connected? Is there causation and correlation, or is there not causation and correlation? To this day, I don't think anybody really knows one way or the other, can scientifically say one way or the other. I've made my point on it. I certainly might be proven wrong one of these days. But with Tiffany, what you have to remember is that her sister did not live there. That was her first night there, and because she was the sister, the older sister, was having a problem with the guy in her life and had gone over there to get away from him. Well, this listener astutely asked me, should not the guy in the sister's life be considered? I mean, what are the odds the very next morning after the sister comes over that Tiffany goes missing? And could this have been a stalking situation where this guy followed the sister over to where Tiffany was living, of course, with her mother and the guy in the mother's life. And then Tiffany comes out by herself, and that guy is, this guy is waiting there. I want you to know that I've asked the sister about this, and I'm not going to get into what her answer was. It's something to consider. Don't know if it's true or not, but it's not something, I have to admit, this is something that really did not cross my mind at the time. Maybe it should have. It's just an idea, given that we just don't like coincidences like this. Maybe if Deandra the sister had been over there for several weeks or a month or several months because she was having problems with this guy, and then this wouldn't even be a consideration probably. But given that it's right after she went over there, it's something that should be considered. So maybe you need to go back and listen to that episode and ask that question for yourself. And like I said, I brought this up to Deandra. I'm not getting into what she said. So that ends, at this point, the updates for the podcast. I will now go into the updates for the Unfound Nows, of course, the series that plays monthly on YouTube. And we're going to start, if you can believe it, with Heidi Plank. If you will remember, Heidi Plank, her disappearance caught national attention. Remember, she was the woman, she was at her, was it at a football game? I think it was at her son's football game. This is in the LA area. And she left at halftime for some reason. And then there was video, I guess she had like one of those doorbells with the camera on it, seen leaving, getting in her vehicle, taking her dog. And she went to downtown LA to a high-rise down there, was walking around, seen on video, and then later her dog was found, I forget on what exactly, what floor it was, of that condo building. Remember, it's all coming back to you now. Remember, this is still unsolved. Heidi has not been found. And there have been a lot of allegations. Was there some drug party happening on one of those floors, and that's where she was going to, and something happened, and she overdosed. And there are a lot, you can find them, a lot of crazy stories. A lot of 3 a.m. Reddit posts about Heidi's disappearance. The police, LAPD, their investigation was along the lines, well, did she go down a trash chute in that building? And I know all about trash chutes, living in a building that has one right outside my door here. And so they went out to the local landfill and started looking around, and once again, nothing was found. The dog seemingly unharmed. Dog was not helpful. No signs of violence or anything, not malnourished or anything like that. Nothing, to my knowledge, the dog is still alive, went back to the home, I guess. Well, the reason I'm bringing this up is because within the last couple of months, Heidi's name made it into a news article in LA, but for another reason. The associates of some of the people indicted Wednesday on suspicion of running an underground gambling ring in the San Fernando Valley were previously suspected of involvement with an illegal poker room in a downtown LA high-rise, the same building where Heidi Plank was last seen. Several law enforcement sources familiar with the investigation told NBC LA. The sources said there was information Plank may have met up with one or more of the people attending the poker game that day, or had visited the apartment where it was being held before she vanished. Plank, who was 38, vanished on October 17th of 2021. I can't believe it's going to be 4 years ago. After attending her son's football game, there you go, in Downey, she was later seen on security video near the apartment building at 12th and Hope Streets, and her dog was found wandering on an upper floor. So weird. I have to tell you, now that I live in a building kind of like that, I'd be so freaked out if I went out. And I love animals, and they love me. But if I were to walk out my door here on the 8th floor and just see a dog standing there and no humans around, that would be so freaky. It would be. And I'd be looking around. Even if the dog wasn't nasty, it just came up to me and was friendly and everything, it would still freak me out. Just saying. The indictment, unsealed Wednesday, did not address the alleged downtown gambling room, and no arrests have been made in Plank's disappearance. In late November 2021, the LAPD began a massive search of the Chiquita Canyon landfill near Castaic after detectives developed other information that Plank's remains might have been buried with trash removed from the downtown high-rise. And you should remember, we have featured a disappearance where there is the possibility that the woman went in to a trash chute. Although, unfortunately, right at this second, the woman's name is escaping me. I don't have it in my notes. But it was a disappearance that was featured just within the last couple of years. Her daughter was the guest, and it happened, I believe, in Ohio. It's all those things kind of stick with me Forget the name, though. I'm going to have to look that up. Through the magic of editing, yes, her name was Elaine Johnson from Parma, Ohio. Now I remember, and now all of you now remember. So we have had a disappearance where there was at least a theory that the woman, for some reason, could have gone down the garbage chute. I'm not telling you that you have to believe that for Elaine Johnson, but something to consider. So, as you just heard, LAPD looked into this. Her remains have not been found. LAPD detectives investigating Plank's disappearance were present in 2022 when federal agents searched a home on Chandler Boulevard in Sherman Oaks, where some of the men named in the indictment unsealed this week were suspected of running another illegal gaming room, according to the search sources, copies of search warrants, and other court records. I'm trying to see. Yes, and if and it was very recently, you might have seen in sports news, Gilbert Arenas, former NBA player, this whole thing was connected to him. If you saw that he was charged with some crimes involving illegal gambling and everything, this is that thing. If you were wondering, if you are familiar with that. Let's see. Once again, I'm just, and you can find that article. Just do a search probably for Heidi Plank. Google her name and San Fernando Valley or gambling or something. You will find the article, and you can read the entire article for yourself. What do I think about this? It seems thin to me. What are the odds that she would be in there and that's going on there? I don't know. I don't know how many illegal gambling rings there are in LA. So it's hard for me to say whether that's weird or not. And it seems odd that they would leave the dog in there. Why wouldn't they get the dog to go downstairs? Because I think if you want, the insight that I have is that maybe leaving the dog there, the dog being there, was actually kind of evidence. Kind of like, well, if we're going to start looking for Heidi, maybe it's best to start looking on this floor. Because you have to admit, if the dog is not found in the building, let's say the dog goes missing with Heidi, very unfortunately, or the dog is found roaming the streets of LA, the police probably never look in that building and discover this gambling ring or whatever else they might have found in the building. Leaving the dog there was a very poor choice. You'd think if there was foul play regarding Heidi's disappearance that they would have known that. I dispute whether Heidi was ever in that building at all. And it's also confusing to me because here in my building, we have cameras all over the place. In fact, we have security, as I've talked about before. We actually have a person at a guardhouse down at the entrance to this building out, right there where the property meets Gulf Boulevard. And what about the cameras? Because the police got onto this disappearance, the way I remember it, fairly quickly. And she's not seen on any of these cameras. Well, if she's not seen on any of the video, maybe she didn't go in the building. Because surely the building had cameras. Surely. So I have my doubts that that building has anything to do with her disappearance at all. But maybe she did go in there. And you're leaving your son's football game at halftime. That does sound like a drug run to me. So can believe that. But on the other hand, then she's seen walking the streets in downtown LA, seemingly not in a hurry for anything. So it's a tough one. It's tough. It doesn't neatly fall into any category that I have come up with for disappearances. Maybe I have to think about it a little longer. Next update, not so much an update, but as a reminder, something to think about given recent events, recent media coverage, and that is the disappearance of Lorenzo Holmes Jr. and Unfound Now. If you remember, Lorenzo worked on a cruise ship, and he, on purpose, jumped from that cruise ship up there in Alaska while it was fairly close to shore. It was not way out in the Pacific Ocean. The land was kind of right there. And if you go back and find that Unfound Now episode, you'll see the map analysis that I did in the middle of the video. He's still missing, despite jumping off a cruise ship very close to shore. Now, you know why I'm bringing this up. If you're very astute, you know why I'm bringing this up. I'm bringing it up because of all the recent coverage of Amy Bradley's disappearance. And the reasoning has been, well, there's no way she could have gone off the ship close to shore because she would have been found. Lorenzo Holmes Jr. hasn't been found. And there are no allegations that somebody picked him up, like saved him, and now he's being sex trafficked in Alaska. Right? I'm here to tell you, you go off a cruise ship anywhere, and you hit that water, there's a very good chance they're not going to find you. And certainly, even if it's docked, okay. If it's right there on the dock and somebody jumps off a railing, I guess the odds are better that the person will be found. I think it still could be lethal. Probably going to be found dead, but more likely. But you start getting out into these channels where these ships are coming in, and one ship's going one way, the other ship's going the other, and all these other boats and everything. It's just, there's no guarantee that a body would be seen if it went in just within a half mile of shore. That's pretty close. Considering that cruise ships go hundreds of miles out into the ocean, way, 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 way far away from land, only being a half mile out is fairly close. And I still think somebody could go off a ship and the body never be found, because we know that happened with Lorenzo Holmes Jr., and that's just one we know about. A lot of cruise ships out there, a lot of people going over railings for accident purposes, suicide purposes, murder purposes, all over the world. And I'm sure there have been many people who have gone off ships into the water close to shore who have never been found. Amy Bradley is one of those, I believe. So don't believe these people that tell you, well, it's so close to shore, she surely would have been seen. Well, you'd think Lorenzo Holmes Jr. would have been seen. And surely he was noticed to be missing sooner than Amy was. Still couldn't find him. Keep that in mind. Next update, and this is more of a alerting all of you, to remind all of you, and that would be Travis Decker. Of course, he is a killer. He's the guy who killed his daughters. Remember that? Killed them, I think, by putting plastic bags over their heads. I'm not here to gross you all out. He is still missing. I did an Unfound Now on him. What I said was I would be inclined to believe that he's still in the area where their bodies were found. I realized that they might have found some search information, internet information, Google information, that he was looking into this, going here, or going there, or going to Mexico, or whatever it was in those searches that he was doing online. He would have to know that police would look into that stuff. I think that was for purposes of misleading police. Because he's going to know that they're going to look at that. Why would he do that? He would know they're going to look, and that would just get him caught. I think this was a purpose to mislead everybody. Well, just to remind you, he is still out there. He is a killer. We have every reason to believe that if he is painted into a corner, he thinks he's going to get caught, that he might strike out or might lash out, who's ever trying to catch him, if he has a gun, knife, or whatever. So be very careful out there. Travis Decker is still out there. I don't know if he's still alive or not. He very well could be dead. Maybe he committed suicide or something. He just hasn't been found yet. But until that is proven, he's out there somewhere. So please remember that, especially for people up there in the northwest part of the U.S. I think he's still up in that area. I very well could be wrong. He could be here in Florida somewhere for all I know. Physically he could be, conceivably, possibly. So just remember that. Killer still on the loose. Travis Decker, make sure you look up pictures of him so you know what he looks like. And if you do see him, do not try to do a citizen's arrest or anything. Just call the police. Don't do anything stupid. Just call the police. And the final update, Alyssa Petrov. And some of you already know where this one is going. This is the Unfound Now I just did. What was that, the end of June? Or was that the end of July? I think it was the end of June. And this was a teenage girl who seemingly ran away from her home on her own. There was other thinking out there. She might have been abducted and sex trafficked and everything else. And you can go back and listen to that episode for yourself. That you will hear at the end that I was fairly positive that she was still alive. I saw no reason to believe that she was sex trafficked. I did mention some names that were out there in the news that people saying, well, these guys might have had something to do with their disappearance. And I hung tight to my idea that there's no proof that any of these guys had any interaction with Alyssa. But of course, by the time I was featuring Alyssa's disappearance, I think it was already a month old or something like that. And by that time, police would surely know if through electronic means whether she had contact with these guys. There was nothing like that in the news. But if you go on certain sites out there, certain blogs, all sorts of allegations that she got sex trafficked and this is what's going on. But I was fairly positive. She told her friends she was going to run away. She didn't say, I'm running off with a guy. She didn't say that I'm going to go meet a guy in Las Vegas. She didn't say this. She didn't say that. She said she was going to just generally run away. And even though I realize that sometimes missing people before they go missing, lie, I did not think that Alyssa was lying. I thought that if she was really going to meet some guy, I think that that's what she would have told her friends. Just the idea that I got. And guess what? The day after the Unfound Now episode concerning Alyssa came out, she turned herself into police in Colorado. And according to the news story, she was in fine health. She was getting food or whatever somehow. Good health. Doesn't sound like she met up with anybody, or it didn't sound like there were any bruises on her, any injuries, nothing. And she was by herself. It wasn't like somebody caught her and brought her in or something. She just voluntarily turned herself in the day after Unfound Now episode came out. Now, what has gone on since then, I have no idea. I'm hoping, I don't know what was going on with Alyssa for her to do this, bad home life, I don't know. Whatever it is, I hope it all gets straightened out. And I hope that is the last time she ever runs away. And I hope she has a long, beautiful, healthy life. I really hope she does. But it's nice to be right about a disappearance and then the person also be alive. That is kind of very rewarding for me. And she, I don't know why she did it. I'm not saying she turned herself in because of the episode. Maybe she did. I don't know. That would be news to me. I don't know. I love the timing, though. But I'm happy that I got one right and the person was alive for once. So Alyssa Petrov turns herself in. I'm guessing she's now back in Utah. I have no idea what has gone on since then. In fact, I'm sure nobody knows in the public. The only people who know what has gone on with Alyssa's probably her family and authorities since she turned herself in. So I got one right. Happy about it. All right. No, I'm finished with all the updates, and you know what we always do to finish these episodes. If you could now pause whatever you are doing as I now read off all of the missing people featured on Unfound and Unfound Now. Suzanne Lyall, Jason Jolkowski, Jesse Foster, Rose Marie Gayhart, Ben Charles Padilla, Kelly Rothwell, Joshua Guimond, Donnie Smatlack, Andrea Bowman, Robin Abrams, Regina Marie Boss, Christopher Hyde, Jeff Nichols, Rebecca Gary, James Walker, Teresa Butler, Charlotte Paulus, Lola Catherine Fry, Eric Franks, Jeff Joseph, Donna Mikolenko, David Medot, Kent Monroe, and Omar Shearer, Claudia Wells, Peggy and Patty McDaniel, Shannon Turner, Brandy Wells, Clashendra Hall, Ronnie Russell, Esther Westenbarger, Shane Fell, Ashley Eifert, Brandon Williams, Craig Frier, Pamela Golden, Chip Campbell, Amanda DeGuio, the passengers and crew of Flight 370, April Pitzer, Jennifer Wilkerson, Kent Jacobs, Aaron Gilbert, Tammy Leppert, Crystal Morrison, Chris Turner, Linda Carroll, Nikki McCown, Helen Diamond, Laura Bible and Ashley Freeman, Lucinda Hewells, Ashley Kohler, Debbie Lowe, Patrick Beavers, Clinton Nelson, Troy Galloway, Patty Action, Danielle Bell, Evelyn Hartley, Dow Phillips, Tyler Stice, Bill Underhill, Patricia Taylor, Aaron Barnard, Jeremy Burt, Brian Sullivan, Nikki Wells, Marina Bolter, Mandy Stokes, Greg Brooks, Rebecca Henderson, Dominic Holly Grisham, Tiffany Daniels, Nicholas Masucci, Donald Irwin, Billy DiSilvestro, Renee Yergain, Mikkel Biggs, Al Copper, J.R. Mullahan, Jamie Bowen, Travis Robertson, Rosemary Rapp, Kristen Modafferi, Zoe Campos, Sean Ginyard, Thomas Brown, Amanda Fravel, Julie Early, Ellen Sloan, Renee Lamanna, Nico Lisi, Leah Peebles, Melissa Hasley, Kimberly Raymer, Stephen Kocher, Bonnie Joseph, Immaculate Basil, Bobby Campbell, Kimberly Norwood, Alyssa Turney, Bobby Tennyson, Dale Kerstetter, Lacey Buenfil, Peggy McGuire, Jansen Brewer and Daniel Braden, Robert Wayne Cox, Lucas Degerness, Stephen Adams, Ashley Summers, Bonnie Dagus and Jeremy Dagus, Judith Emke, Jessica Hamby, Tim Beauchart, Devin Bond, Juanita Nelson, Desiree Ferris, Angie Yarnell, Deborah Asbury, Sean Koski, Mary Lands, Devin Brown-Busetta, Shana Boydo, Travis Murrow, Keith Fetter, Layla Faulkner, Megan Lancaster, Kelly Sims, Jack Hemby, Barbara Frame, Dory Ann Myers, Austin Pivo, Christine Hamilton, Monica Appleton, Jonathan Estes, Molly Miller, and Colt Haynes, Donnie Martin III, Kamisha Hollis, Lisa Wallace, Tammy McKittrick, Julie Say, Stephanie Clemens, Andy Chapman, Trevor Nichols, Tiffany Joseph, Tyler North, David Kesey, Lucera Sarabia, Brandy Myers, J.L. Hamblin, Bradley Allen, Timothy Guy, Janelle Matthews, Ronald McNutt, Cameron Remmer, Tammy Arthur, and Chad Peters, Jesse Ross, Lisa Shuttleworth, Jackson Miller, Patrick Reed, Jeremy Goodwin, Mary Jane Van Gilder, Phyllis Corbin, Eric Alvarado, Cassandra Ramirez, April Andrews, David Hardy Jr., Dennis Lushbaugh, Christy Nichols, Chris Sanders, Danielle Sleeper, Julie Weflin, Shelva Rafty, Rodney Kaiser, Chris Mittendorf, and Christina Branham, Gregory Howes, Brian Cook, Charles Thompson, Jessica Garino, Jacob Weeks, Jackie Bucky Letney, Joe Bain, Vanessa Oren, Jennifer Casper Ross, Robbie Hurt, Unique Harris, Doug Jones, Deborah Bowman, Bradley Brooks, Angela Green, Jodi Huisentruit, Brennan Smokey, Rouse Chapman, Marion Hurley, Gayla Shaper, Caleb Powell, Chelsea Cobo, Bonnie Santiago, TJ Murray, Noah Davis, Patty Dudek, Ben Archer, Jake Lachelet, Sky Burnley, Kayleen Oling, Stephanie Hartwell, Nylene Marshall, Kaya Taylor, Pearl Pinson, Brenda Condon, Alwyn Albright, Sky Tosick, Sandy Knipe, Brian Schaefer, Teresa Woolard, Toby Anderson, David Schrader, Chance Engelbert, Julianne Gille, Rachel Sierks, Sean Antill, Randy Duran, Rashawn Francis, Amanda Ward Romine, Crystal Bailey, Brenda Sika, Laverta Sorrell, Nicholas Shin, Kevin Newen, Ashley Simpson, Leanne Hausberg, Alicia Markovich, Audrey Heron, Lonine Rogers, Beatrice Viela, Ali Lowitzer, Jamie Peterson, Belinda Blanyar, Jordan Carvalho, Christian Balky Thompson, Paul Sanders, Jennifer Perry, Andrea Knabel, Sebastian Kelly, Marianne Verdecchia, Marcella Krolsey, and Mary Regan, Sue Swedell, Mark Heimbaugh, Dub and Chance Wackerhagen, Kimberly Wilson Talley, Harry Milligan, Paul Egan, Steve Davis, Douglas Crawford, Rhonda Smith, Ryan Stuka, Daniel Villarreal, Mary Watkins, Bradley Strassner, Justin Gaines, Jacqueline Cooper, Holly White, Michaela Bally, Chase Lackey, Belinda Brewster, The Pickering Six, Jay Boyle, Michael Cummins, Danny Higgins, Chad Smith, Robbie Rumbold, and Jamie Lafaber. Brenda Davidson, Milda McQuillan, Kyle Fleischman, Paris Hobson, Bernard Rusness, and Peggy McKay. Jessica Stacks, Natasha and Susan Carter, Angela Freeman, Mark Allen, Mary Cox, Jamie Valdez, Jace Martin, Brandon Rashar, Keith Call, and Sandra Haley, Evelyn Piper, Leslie Allen and children, Matthew Braswell, Brandon Roberts, Emily Richards, Bo Mann, Judith Devers Hyder, Barbara McCrae, Judy Brown and Richard Riesenberg, Jason Landry, Athel Turner, Treveline Evans, Alan Glasgow, Barbara Cotton, Tony Schwark, Sean Dickerson, Patricia Otto, David Wagoner, Mara Murray, Brian Vargo, Bianca Carrasco, Paige Renkoski, Betty Tepfer, Joel Akridge, Brenda Lambert, Aaliyah Boomer, Donnie Atkins, Brandon Barron, Jesse Farber, Christopher Dalfett, John Spira, Patsy Clark, Arlen Bynum, Irene Gakwa, Kenny Weaver, Ashley Higgins, Camille Dardanes, Pauline Diaz, Jamie Lee, Lisa Green, Larry Goodman, Irma McCurcheon, Glenda Griffin, Nancy Garcia, Kim Moreau, Carl Pope, Elenia Carisi, Sylvia Galvin, April Wiss, Ashley Linden, Jaden Carpenter, Ricky Bryant, David Fugati, Stevie Hammerly, and Joe Grashner, Aidan Clune, Brianna Maitland, James Leitka, Ray Fausto Leppi, Elaine Johnson, Carl Schooner Jr., Valerie Ingorvaya, Clinton Thomas Sr., Zach Carey, Shannon Collins, David Kallenberger, Blanca Elisa Robertson, Melinda Lopez, Marlo Christopher Gully, Matthew Keith, Christopher McNeil, Rob McLaughlin, Deanna Merrifield, Erica Hall, Clint Walker, Lene Westbrook, Joe Bushling, Jonathan Haddon, Tatiana Lupich, Jared McCulloch, Keith Mann, Wendy Gessing, Sue Braddock, Dwayne Thomas, Joey Offit, Richard Hitchcock, Tiffany Reed, Kenneth Plaisted, Layla Santinello, Vicky Smock, Keith Schmidt, Matthew Tuttle, Sally Stone, Aaron Derbyshire, Tanya Sadecki, Anthony Reyes, Tenova Ross, Marty Evans, Zachary Vidal, Leo Wagner, Linda Stoltfus, Erica Lloyd, Mary Lane Carter, Stephanie Hollingsworth, Corey Dale Moore, Alan White, Jason Landry, Aaliyah Scheibel, Kirsten Brueggemann, Mark Pinella, Cynthia Baal Traore, Louis Davila, Candy Gonzalez, Justin Sywick, Michael Vaughn, Wendy Gessing, Shannon Miller, Glenda Parton, and Dwayne Selby, Heidi Plank, Stephen Salazar, Lindsay Shobalok, Jordan Simeon, Marie Peter Toltz, Dylan Rounds, Dana Smithers, Gregory Peterson, Caitlin Rose Case, Lorenzo Holmes Jr., Elizabeth Capaldi, Christopher Miller, John Tipton, Maya Blanton, Bao Fan, Shauna Helford, Andrew France, Kay Alana Turner, Andrew Griffin, Fang Jin and John Fitzpatrick, Reno Long, Chelsea Grimm, Caitlin Alice Massey White, Thomas Irwin, Tyler Goodrich, Caleb Harris, Sebastian Rogers, Nadia Cole, Aaron Ong, and daughter Soraya, Taylor Casey, William Orlano, Cynthia McCoy, Robert Williams, Belva Day, Mason McKay, Joseph Gagnon, Alyssa Petrov, Travis Decker, Stephen Wright. Please, if you are someone with the time and the passion for these disappearances, please reach out to one of these families. They need all the help they can get. And that's the program. I'm Ed Densel, and you've been listening to Unfound.